According to recent polling, even Republican voters believe that the GOP's preoccupation with anti-trans and anti-LGBTQ legislation is excessive and theatrical. Intrigued? Then click that like and subscribe and enjoy the video. One of the biggest reasons, if not the biggest reason, that we still struggle to address certain problems, be it climate change, gun violence, mass shootings, reproductive rights, all these things, is because not because we have two parties that disagree in legitimate good faith about how to solve these problems, but because, for all their faults, we have one party, the Democratic Party, that is interested, to some extent, in responsible governance, and then we have an opposition party that is not interested in governing, not interested in legislating on substantive issues, but is basically there to simply be a partner in a three-legged race that just drops to the ground and tries to hug the person still standing up to keep them from moving forward, right? It's not like, again, I used the three-legged race metaphor before, but it's not like we're in a three-legged race and we're complaining along the way, but at least we're going in the general direction. We know where we need to go, and we may disagree about, the rate of speed or whatever. What we have is a Republican Party that's basically just flopped to the ground and is trying to sabotage our efforts to advance at all. It's really hard to get things done in this political system, in this civic system, when one of the two major parties is just an active obstruction along the way. And the reason I bring that up, there are millions of reasons why I bring that up, because that's a fact that's reaffirmed again and again and again and again in so many ways. But even recent polling has indicated that the Republican Party's priorities are just out of touch even with their base. And this makes sense. It's so frustrating. So having grown up in red states most of my life, surrounded by conservatives, I have conservative family members and friends who I love dearly. What has being governed by Republicans gotten them, right? Red states tend to be the poorest, the most reliant on federal government subsidies, the least healthy, the least educated, all the way around, right? Republican governance doesn't get red states anywhere. And we've talked before about how Republican stewardship of the federal government doesn't get the federal government anywhere. More jobs are created under Democratic administrations. The economy does better under Democratic administrations. Social issues are much better under Democratic administrations. What good are Republicans for? Culture war issues and trying to seize power anti-democratically and fascistically. And recent polls indicate as much. This one here was kind of an eye-opener. Even Republicans think the amount of anti-LGBTQ legislation is excessive political theater. In this legislative session alone, according to the ACLU, there's over 400 bills in red states across the country in Republican legislatures trying to take away gender-affirming care for trans people. Now think about that for a minute. Given all the issues that plague this country, why are the Republicans so hyper-focused on dealing with a minority group or oppressing a minority group? Again, this is a minority group, right? A minority of a minority group that's already marginalized, that already has high rates of suicidality and mental illness. These people already suffer enough. And Republicans are going out of their way, not to deal with inflation, the economy, the border, all these things that they constantly complain about, China, whatever else, domestic manufacturing. They're going out of their way to target a marginalized group which suffers about niche issues like trans athletes in sports. How relevant is that on a state level, let alone a federal level? Not freaking very. So even Republican voters, according to polls, 55% are saying, yeah, their priorities are ridiculous. They are focused entirely too much on this stuff. And obviously, 65% of independents, 72% of Democrats. I'm actually kind of surprised that the Democratic view on this is only 72, right? You would think it'd be like 92. But it's ridiculous. And to me, this is an indictment of the GOP. What's also scary is the fact that they can read this polling too. The Republican Party is well aware of the fact they lost the 2020 presidential election with an incumbent president. They lost control of the Senate in that same 2020 election. That red wave in the 2022 midterms never manifested. It was a pinkish trickle, not a red wave. Republicans aren't stupid, right? Especially Republican leaders. They're cunning. They're intelligent. They're not good at governing, right? In Game of Thrones metaphors, they're little fingers, right? They're not good at running a country, but they're good at scheming, and they see the writing on the wall. That should tell you something. The fact that they're not course correcting, the fact that they're not looking to go a different way, it's because they are doing everything in their power to make it so that they don't need anything even close. I mean, certainly not popular support, but even the support from many of their own base. They're looking to set the game in the rules of the game as such that they can just cling to power fascistically and anti-democratically, so that they don't need to appeal to even the majority of their own base. They can just appeal to a plurality of radicalized cultists. That's dangerous. And this is proof once again, whether Republican voters want to come out and say it this way, they don't trust their own party to govern responsibly. So let's continue to make that case.